Since the dawn of time, man has been curious. And for almost as long, the Vibes Broadcast Network has sought the truth. Investigate, discuss, explore. Okay, maybe in other episodes, but this one is just listen to the vibes.
The views and opinions of our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the host or the Vibes Broadcast Network. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And I'm very, very happy and pleased to have Mr. Dave Combs here with me. He is a songwriter, a photographer, an author, publisher, Have you been to the moon yet?
Not yet. Not yet. Oh, in my mind, I have, yes.
Oh, I hear you. I hear you. But anyway, we're going to have a great conversation, learn a little bit about him and his music. And I want to know about the photography as well. So let's kick this off. You just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, again, I'm Dave Combs. I am happily married to my wife of coming up on 52 years. Her name is Linda. She and I live in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, have been since I came here out of college in 1969, with exception of a few years where we went to Washington to work for a few years. But basically, I'm a East Tennessee boy raised in the mountains of East Tennessee in a little town called Erwin near Johnson City. And I grew up in a musical family. And Kyle, I think if you live in Tennessee, I believe there is a state requirement that you have to play an instrument.
I believe it.
So I grew up around music all my life. My mom and dad both played the piano. My grandmother Combs played the old pump organ and an auto harp, and just music was around me my whole life. I grew up in church, obviously, in Erwin in a Baptist church. Music was a big part of our worship services with choir and organ and piano duets and special music. And so, I remember one of the highlights of my young life was when my voice changed from talking like this and like that. You finally settle down on something, and I got asked to sing in the choir. And so that was a big day, kind of a promotion for me into my young adulthood. But I love to sing. I'm not a soloist, but I do like to sing in the choir. And I ended up being a choir director. I directed my home church choir as a part-time minister of music when I was growing up and to work my way through college. And even after college, in my first job, within that first year of coming to Winston-Salem, I also became a part-time minister of music for a couple of years at a local church. So that's been an important part of my religious life and my music life combined. And then I worked for Western Electric, which later became AT&T. I worked for that company for 22 and a half years. And starting in 1969 as a computer programmer. I'm a technical oriented kind of person. I'm pretty analytical. It's people say, well, how can you be so analytical and so creative at the same time? I said, well, I just have to turn one side of my brain off and back on for writing my music. But so in 1981, I was doing what I normally do in the evenings to relax, sitting down at my piano to play some music just to relax. Mm-hmm. And I had just tuned my piano. It was an old 100-year-old piano. It wouldn't hold its tune very well. So I had purchased a tuning hammer, and I would, tune it up, the strings that had slipped a little bit. I'd get it back in sort of good tune. And every time I tuned it, I always liked to sit down. It's like tuning your guitar or something. Once you get it really good tune, you want to play something pretty on it. So I sat down at the piano, and I started playing this song. And it seemed to me like it was a song that had existed for a million years. I didn't know the name of it or anything. It's just, I played it. And I didn't really think much about it. I did not sit down to write a song. I sat down and played a song that in retrospect, looking back, that song was a gift to me. 2 or 3 days later, my wife comes home from work. She was working at the local bank, and she comes in and she says, Dave, what's the name of this song? It's got it stuck in my head, and I keep humming it all day long. And she hummed a little bit of it, and I said, well, Linda, it doesn't have a name. And she says, what? I said, yeah, it's just something I just made up. And she got all excited and said, well, have you written it down? I said, no, I've got it up here. And she said, no, something might happen to you and that song would be gone. So I said, okay, I'll write it down. So I did, wrote down the notes and the chords, put it in my piano bench, and didn't think much more about it. I'd play it periodically for Linda and for friends or whatever. But then about 2 years later, some good friends of ours had a little baby girl, and they asked me and Linda to be her godparents. So at this little baby girl's christening, her christening service on a Saturday, Linda and I were there in the back of the church, watching and listening to all the wonderful things that the minister was saying about this new life. And her name was Rachel. And so at the end of the formal part of the service, I kind of punched Linda and I said, what do you think about if I play this little tune now in the church service, in this christening service? She said, well, it sounds like a good idea. So I went up to the family and the preacher and I said, I've got a little tune I would like to play in Rachel's honor. Would that be something would be okay? Okay. So everybody sat back down and I went over to this beautiful grand piano that was sitting in the middle of the platform in the church at the front. I sat down and I started playing this song. And as I got halfway into the song or so, I heard the little sniffles out in the crowd, and I noticed that my eyes were beginning to leak a little bit too. And so it was a pretty emotional experience. The song is really a very touching song anyway. And so I played it, and as I finished playing the song, I looked up and I said, from now on, we're going to call this song Rachel's song in her honor. And so that's how it got its name. And it just was a perfect fit for the song. And every time I played it then, it was from then on, it's Rachel's song.
I have to ask her, what's it like to have a song named after you?
Well, when she was a tiny little girl, she would always run around when they play the song and she'd say, that's my song. That's my song.
I love it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I want to get more into your music, but when did you get saved?
When I was about probably 12 or 13 years old.
Wow.
We were having a revival, and I remember Preacher Green was the pastor, and at the end of the service, something just convicted me that now was the time. I've been thinking about it. You know, I'm sure you remember as well yourself. It's something you think about a lot. It's not just a snap decision.
Right.
And
Something
so
you take seriously, for sure.
Take seriously. So I remember after the service, this was a revival service, I was standing over around towards the front of the church, and Preacher Green comes over to me and he says, Dave, something tells me that you and I need to talk about your decision that you need to make. And so we sat there and then we kneeled down and prayed, and I took the Lord as my Savior, and I'll never forget that night. It was just a real special occasion. I remember going home and telling my brother and my mom and dad my decision. They were so happy, and it just it's one of those turning points in your life, and it's a life decision, lifetime.
Do you mind if I share my story real quick?
I would love for you to, Kyle.
I never get to tell this story, but so I used to work for an exterminating company, and I went to go do a termite inspection. And when I got there, I mean, here's this guy, real burly looking guy, long hair, tattoos, you know, got motorcycles in the garage. You know, that's my kind of people. That's who I grew up around. And so I got to talking to him. And before I knew it, we had talked the whole time I was supposed to be doing the inspection. And I was going to be late to my next job. And thank God he said, don't worry about it. I ain't got termites, just go. But so I'm talking to the guy, I'm talking to him about his motorcycles and whatnot. And he turns to me and he says, you go to church anywhere? And it kind of took me aback a little bit.
Whoa.
And I'm like, this guy goes to church, you know? And this guy, he used to be a bandito, the whole 9 yards. And so he said, I'd like for you to go to church with me. And I thought, well, if this guy can go to church, surely I can. And so I'm like, man, I'd love to go, but I don't have a car. And he said, don't worry about it. We'll come pick you up. And I said, well, if you'll come pick us up, then we'll be there. And sure enough, that Sunday he was there. My family and I went up, and I got to hear this wonderful message. Never heard it like that before. You know, I'd been to a Methodist church, a Church of Christ, and all these others, but I'd never been told that I could go up and accept Jesus as my Savior to, you know, in order to get to heaven. And so I never had that feeling before. I went up, and I'm immediately after the service, I went home. I threw out all my beer. I threw out all my tobacco. You know, anything that was associated with my old life, I got rid of and started my new life, and even preached for several years. And anyway, the rest, there's more to the story. I just say I fell and got back closer to God again, and that's for another show. But I wanted to share that. I never get to tell that story.
Well, thank you for sharing. That's a wonderful testimony.
Oh, thank you. So you had that song actually recorded by someone, correct?
Yeah, the naming of it took place in 1983,
Mm-hmm.
and I was working at AT&T, and my job took me around the country. We were implementing new manufacturing software in all the factories across the country, and so I was in and out of lots of, AT&T and Western Electric had plants in a lot of places, but one of the places that AT&T had a plant was in Nashville, Tennessee, and I think God had a plan in that too somehow or other, because Linda said, well, while you're in Nashville working, why don't you find a studio and a musician and get a demo recording made of Rachel's song?
Mm-hmm.
I thought, well, that sounds like a good idea. So I jumped in my car one evening after work, and I drove around Music Square, down, if you've been to Nashville, there's an area called Music Square. It's everything musical is right there. And I was looking around for a studio, and I drove down this one road called Roy Acuff Place. And you've probably been on it yourself, but at the end of been down to the end of the street, but on the right was a big barn-looking building with a makeshift water wheel, like the old water wheel mills that used to be. It was out front, and on the sign on the building it said the Music Mill, and I thought, okay. So I turned the corner and pulled in the parking lot. Saw that there was a guy sitting at a desk through the glass door. So I went up to the door, and he came and unlocked it and introduced himself. He says, hi, I'm George Clinton. Can I help you? Now, it's not the other George Clintons that you're aware of. But
not the Parliament one.
No. This is the and bless his soul, he has since passed away. But George was a fabulous recording engineer in Nashville, very highly thought of. But I didn't know that at the time. I just knew him as a person that answered the door. I told him what I wanted. I was looking for a studio to record a demo of my song. And so he said, well, this is a studio. And I walked in the lobby, and sure enough, here's a big old life-size picture of Glenn Campbell and Alabama, the group, and the Forrester sisters. And then there were gold records and platinum records around the walls. So it was obviously a very highly professional studio. And so he gave me a tour of the place, and I'd never been in a studio. And so I was just blown away by all the technology and how much equipment and room and what the quality of the place was. So I said, well, how much, George, does this place rent for? If I wanted to rent some time here to do a demo, he says, well, it's $125 an hour plus engineer. Well, this was 1986. That's a lot of money back then.
Oh, yeah.
And so I guess he saw my face kind of fall. He says, well, don't worry about it. The guy that owns this one owns a tiny little studio across the street, and it's $15 an hour plus engineer. And I thought, well, that's more my speed. So anyway, to make a long story short, George, I said, I need a piano player, somebody that could play my song. And he thought for a second. He said, I know just the right person for you. His name is Gary Prim. I said, okay. And so he flipped his Rolodex and found Gary Prim's phone number, wrote it down on a piece of paper, and gave it to me. Great. So I left and went back to my hotel room, and I called Gary Prim. And I got his answering machine, told him what I was needing, and he called me back. About 30 minutes later, my phone rings in the hotel, and it's Gary. And he says, can I help you? I said, I hope so. And I told him what I wanted, and he said, yeah, sure, we can do that. No problem. He says, just send me a recording of you playing your song so I'll know what it sounds like, and a lead sheet. And I said, well, what's a lead sheet?
That would have been my question.
Now, anybody in the music business in Nashville knows what a lead sheet is. So I was obviously ignorant of the lingo. But he says, oh, it's just the melody and the chords written out. And I said, oh, I've got that. I just didn't know what to call it. So I went back home and sure enough sent him the lead sheet and a cassette tape of me playing Rachel's song. And he and I lined up a studio a couple of weeks later on a Friday evening, August the 22nd, 1986. I'll never forget, 6 p.m. It was another one of those unforgettable moments in your life. And so I went to that studio on that Friday night, and Gary shows up at 6 o'clock carrying his synthesizer under his arm and comes in. And nice fellow, just one of those people you meet and it's instantly a friend, you know, just easy to talk to. So he sets up in the recording room, and then the engineer and I are in the control room where the engineer is. And he starts playing, of course, on there was a Yamaha baby grand piano there. He starts playing a little bit just to warm up a little bit. And then he says, I'm ready. So the engineer pushes record and says, we're rolling. And Gary starts playing Rachel's song. And I'm in there listening to it on the monitor speakers, and I'm, wow, this sounds a whole lot better than what I did. And so he got about halfway through it, and he says, now, let's do it over. Let's rewind. I can do better than that. So he rewound the tape, pushed record again. And then Gary played Rachel's song all the way through, no notes missing at all. I mean, it was perfect, just perfect. So that was on second take. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. He said, well, I'm not done yet. He said, I think we need to add some electric piano. What I'd like to do is what they call doubling. He wanted to double the melody that he played on the acoustic piano on an electric. So it would give it a kind of a fuller sound. And when you hear the recording, you can hear this. So he puts on the headset just like you and I have on, and sitting there, and he's listening to himself play the original piano part. And on the synthesizer, he's playing the electric piano part right along with himself. I mean, and in musical terms, they called it was tight. It was everything was right. The beats were lined up perfectly. I was totally amazed at his skill at being able to do that. And then he says, well, I think we need to add maybe some strings to give this some warmth. And so he said, well, let's give it some bottom. Let's do some low strings, and I'll give it some bottom there. And then he wound it back up, assigned 2 more tracks on the recorder, and recorded low strings. And he said, well, it needs some high strings too. So do it again, 2 more tracks, and add high strings. And then in the middle, when you hear Rachel's song, and I hope, I think you and all your listeners will be able to hear Rachel's song as part of the podcast. In the middle of it, it changes keys. And this was the part that grabbed me, because this was not the way I had played it, but it's the way he arranged it. Mm-hmm. He played the verse and chorus twice. And then for the third verse and chorus, he very dramatically transposed it from the key of C up a half a step to the key of D flat. I mean, there's no modulation or anything. It was very dramatic. And when you're really listening to the song, it kind of just energizes you one more level more than you're already energized. And then in part of that, he added some horns as well to give it a little more dramatic effect, I guess. So he did that. He said, well, I think that's it. I said, man, this is fantastic. So I paid him his agreed upon fee, and he got his synthesizer and left. And I didn't know whether I would ever see Gary again in my life or not, but all I know was he had made a huge difference that day. So the engineer and I stayed, and he mixed it down to 2-track stereo and made me some cassette tapes of it that I could take home with me, and my master tape. He gave me a reel-to-reel 2-track master stereo tape, one that you could use to make records. Mm. So, this whole process is almost surreal to me, because I walk in the studio with nothing but a piece of paper and notes on a piece of paper, and I walk out with what I considered as good a high-quality instrumental song I'd ever heard anywhere by anybody. It just was, I guess, Linda and I never had any children, but I can envision this like the birth of a child. You go in the hospital, you come home with a beautiful baby girl or baby boy. It's just it's thrilling, absolutely thrilling.
Oh, there's something magical about a recording studio. My great uncle had one, and I remember as a child going up there, and he would take something as simple as me at the microphone and make it sound so professional. He recorded me doing Tom T. Hall and Elvis Presley. That tells you how old I am.
Oh, yeah. What they can do in the studio. First of all, you have to have the quality musicians and the quality music. But then on top of that, the equipment and the technology they can use is pretty amazing.
Yeah, we did go to Tennessee. My wife's aunt lives up there, and we were actually on our way to our honeymoon. And so we stopped there, and we got to go into Nashville and went to the Ernest Tubbs record store.
Yeah.
The Johnny Cash Museum, went to Sun Records, and went to the Grand Ole Opry. Had to go to the Grand Ole Opry.
Oh, yeah.
You can't go there without, was very proud that I bought my mom some Minnie Pearl merchandise to take home.
Yeah, you might even have gotten to meet Minnie Pearl. I mean, she was there as long as she was living and performing. She would be backstage meeting the people that came, and I met Minnie Pearl a long, long time ago. Now this will really take you back. This is before she was really real big. When I was a little kid, she would come around to grocery stores and meet people. And I was up in East Tennessee, and I was Minnie Pearl territory. So I remember meeting Minnie Pearl at the White's grocery store. She was just there to celebrate the opening of a store or something special. And she was quite a lady, quite a lady.
No, my grandfather, he built stuff out of wood. I mean, he carved and he made just some of the most beautiful stuff you ever saw. And when he passed away, I really didn't want to fight over, what Grandpa had. There was only a few things that I really wanted. And one of them, we have to go back, but he built these wooden trains. And he gave a set to Roy Acuff, and Roy Acuff signed a picture for him. And so I have that displayed in my living room. So yeah, when you said Roy, I was like, oh, wow, I got a story to tell about him.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, I'm one of these people that, you like whatever music you like, but when it comes to country music, I like the old stuff. That's what I was raised on. I grew up watching Hee Haw, and I was more inclined to, even though I like Junior, I like Hank Williams Sr. more. And my favorite of all time is Buck Owens. It's I could go through the old stuff. There's just something magical about the older music to me, and I don't like the new stuff. I mean, you like what you like, but I don't like the new stuff.
Well, I like you, but I in my many trips, because I ended up going back to Nashville to make 15 albums.
Oh,
and
wow.
So this was like an annual trek. My first album was in 1988. And then for every year from there till 2001, I would go back to Nashville and record another album. And I can't tell you the number of times. And Nashville is such a wonderful place. You'd record 3 or 4 hours, and now it's lunchtime. Where are we going to go eat? All right, let's go to the Green Hills Grill. And so we would go there, and we'd be sitting down, and there comes Reba McEntire. There comes Randy Travis. I mean, it's just the musicians they're really down to earth people when you come down to it. And of course they knew Gary Prim and my engineer, Ronnie Light. And so I was just blown away by, here I am amongst country music royalty here. But they're just ordinary people that just have extraordinary talent and gifts. And those trips to Nashville were always very special.
We ate at this restaurant where you could sit on the roof, and we could see the Titans Stadium from where we were eating. I don't know if you've been to that one or not. I don't even know if there's more there or not, but that was the one thing that kind of stood out to me. But how many songs have you written?
Well, I counted them up some time ago, and I've written over 120. And I've recorded over 170, because I have several albums, 4 of them, of my favorite hymns. And so there's 4 favorite hymns albums. I have 7 albums of original music. And then I have a patriotic album, and I have a Christmas album, and I have what I call my familiar favorites, like Misty and More and Moon River, all the songs I grew up hearing on the radio that I really loved. So I have a total of actually 14 albums plus a collection album, where my 15th one, I took one song from each of my first 14 albums and put them on the 15th. So it's kind of a sampling of all the other albums. So a total of 15 albums.
Oh, wow. And you have a website, right?
Yes, I've had it. I was one of since I'm in the IT business and have been grown up in that. As soon as I found out about websites, I grabbed one, and it's called combsmusic.com. And I guess the other Combses that are famous musicians now would like to have my combsmusic.com website name, but that's okay. But I built my own website in 1995, and that was back before anybody even knew what www stood for. So anyway, it's combsmusic.com, and my email is just dave@combsmusic.com. And I love getting emails from people telling me how they've been touched by my music, about my music and my book. We're going to talk about my book a little bit later. So now, I love to hear from folks.
Now, I'm assuming you can go on your website and purchase your music there.
Well, it will take you to links where you can. For example, if you want a CD, you can either go to Amazon and get a CD, or you can call there's a local physical store that's near where I live that carries my music, and when you call my 800 number, you'll get a live person on the other end, and they can help you with any of my printed sheet music or my CDs or my new book, either one. So there's lots of ways, but yes, you can start with going to my website, and there will be links to take you to the other places where you can go to purchase my music.
Now, are you on any of the streaming services like Spotify?
Yes, if you ask your Spotify to play some Gary Prim music, you will hear some of my recordings. And same with Pandora or iHeartRadio, or I guess what's some others, the Apple Music or even Amazon Music. All of those, when you can look over to your speaker pod over in the corner and just say, hey, play some Dave Combs music or something, and next thing you know, bingo, here we come. So it's pretty amazing.
I'm still one of those old farts that rather get up and put on a record, but that's just me.
Well, I'm with you. I pop my CD in the CD player, and one of the fun things my wife and I both love to do. You can see right behind me here. There's my Steinway grand piano. On the other side is the Kurzweil keyboard piano. And Linda will play the piano and I play the keyboard. And we love to, for example, put on a CD of some 60s music, some of those doo-wop songs or whatever, and play along with them. And that's so much fun to just listen to the music, play along with it, and just have a big time.
Are you, do you have like a specific piano player that's like your favorite above them all?
Well, that's a tough one because there are really a lot of good ones. I love Henry Mancini. And probably my all-time favorite, though, and I did get to meet him one time. Well, actually, there's another story about it, but Roger Williams.
Oh, yes. My mom's a big Roger Williams fan.
Mr. Autumn Leaves. I sent Roger Williams a recording of Rachel's song because I told him, I said, I would love to have you cover my song. And this is probably as good a compliment I ever got from anybody. And he wrote me back. And the word I got was that he said, Dave, I can't make any improvements on that song. And so I would decline to cover it because it is as inspired and as good as it can get. And so I don't know whether that was just his gentle way of letting me down, but I really felt that he probably was touched by the music and decided, I don't need to mess with this song. It's good like it is. Just go.
Wow. Okay. Now I have to ask you about the book.
Well, last year, as the rest of the world, when we're all sitting at home wondering when are we going to get able to get out and go do something and meet some people and get back to life as normal, Linda and I have been talking about this for some time. As you can tell, I've got tons of stories about recording and trips to Nashville and all this. I mean, lots of stories. And people have always, when they hear the stories, they say, well, Dave, you should write that down in a book. And I'd been hearing that for years. And so last year, when we're sitting there in the family room looking at each other saying, now, what are we going to do? She says, well, why don't you do something we've been talking about for years? Why don't we just write your book? Let's just make a commitment to write your book. And I said, okay, I could do that. So I started, this was like November of 2020. This was 2019 in November, we decided to do this. So 2021, I sat down and I've spent the year writing my book. Mm-hmm. And that was a lot of work, to take all the stories and first of all, learning all the technical aspects of getting a book published. It's not just a matter of writing it. You need to have it edited and get it typeset, or the design of the interior of the book, all the cover design, the back of the book, all those things. But I spent last year from January till about September. That's all I did. I would write for 7, 8, 9, 10 hours a day of just text, writing these stories down and rewriting them and editing them and so forth. And I actually ended up hiring 2 editors to help me. Mm-hmm. But working through all this process, by somewhere around August, September, I was all finished with the writing and the design and so forth, and actually published my book that you see on the right side of your screen there. In October, I guess it was October the 10th is when it went live on Amazon, and I had a big launch party on October 20th, and it was just been great. It went right to #1 and on Amazon in a couple of categories immediately, and it's been a bestseller for some time. It's still selling pretty well, and my task now is just to spread the word about my music and my book to hopefully people will be interested enough to go check it out. If you go to my website, and it'll take you a link right to the book on Amazon, you can read, it's called a look inside feature. You can actually read part of the book, a lot of the book actually, and get a feel for what it's like. And if you like what you read, you can purchase it. I think it's available on paperback, or if you like to ebook, you can do a Kindle book. Or if you like to hear my East Tennessee Southern accent for 8 hours reading it, you can get an Audible book. I do have an Audible book where I read the book.
You've had a pretty fulfilling life.
Yeah, it has been. I was able to quit my job in 1992 and do nothing but my music from then till I think it was 2001 when my wife went back to Washington to work for President Bush. She ended up working and was her last job in Washington. She was the controller of the United States in the White House. And while she was doing that, I went to Washington to be with her, and I was the CIO of the Department of Agriculture. And so I did that for 5 years, and then's when both of us came back to Winston-Salem in 2007, and we've been here ever since.
Well, this is the purpose of my show. Number one, I believe everybody has a story to tell. And when you get up and you live life and don't let life just drag you along, you can inspire other people and motivate other people. Just get out and try. That's what I say. At least try. And you never know what can happen. I never thought that I would go from, digging ditches and laying water pipe and sewer pipe to doing things like this. And here's somebody like you. I mean, you started out the way you did, and now look at all the things you've accomplished, and you can inspire a lot of people. So I hope people go out and read your book. I definitely want to read it. I mean, we're going to get into your photography as well, but do you have something to maybe tell people to inspire them, motivate them to live their dreams or just live life in general?
Well, I think what I would like to do is basically echo exactly what you said, and that one of the keys to life, in my opinion, is to take action. You can have all these dreams and thoughts and wishes and wouldas, woulda, coulda, shouldas kind of thing. But when you have a talent, when you have a gift, when you are able to influence other people through your life or what you do or what you say, you need to take action. And Jack Canfield wrote the foreword to my book, and he is famous for saying, he also wrote the book called The Success Principles. Mm-hmm. But one of the principles that he likes to talk about is the principle of taking action. And don't just think about something, and you've got to take some action to make it happen. Nothing ever happens until you take some action. So that's my advice to people listening and watching this podcast is if you have a dream, you have something that you've been feeling in your heart and soul all along that, I think I could do this. Stop thinking about it and just take some action and explore it and get it out there. And what you'll find is there's another law that comes into play, and that's called the law of attraction.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
When you start taking action and moving in a certain direction, things will come to you. What you need, the assets and the things that you need to succeed will be attracted to you. You will meet the people that you need to meet. You will go to discover things that you need to discover. Things will start happening. And so as you take action, that law of attraction will kick in, and you'll be amazed at what can happen. So that's really my message to people is, as you read my book, you'll see all through my book where I call it, there are three kinds of events. There's these defining moments, or those are the ones that you don't have any control over, but they happened, and if it made a big change in your life. And then there's a second kind that we call threshold moments, and those are those where you walk up to a door or to a place and a fork in the road, and you say, what do I do? Do I go to the right? Do I go to the left? Or do I don't even go at all? So it's a decision on your part of whether you take action or not. That's a threshold moment. Mm-hmm. And then there's those other moments, like when I realized after recording Rachel's song on that night in August of 1986, it's an aha moment. You realize, aha, I get it now. This is really important. This is it. This really is going to make some difference in my life. It's such an important event that it's an aha moment. And so I think you need to take your action so that you can have those aha moments.
For sure. And this day and age, most people, they live either on their phone or on the computer, and it seems to be the most interaction that they have. Now, myself, I'm fortunate enough that I'm a very sociable person. My mom would take me to the store, and then she wouldn't find me, and then she'd go on the other side of the store, and I'm sitting there talking to the janitor, But when you go out to the grocery store, let's say, they have your cashiers and self checkout. Personally, I'd rather go the extra 10 minutes and just to talk to the person behind the counter. We need to spend more time getting to know each other outside of this computer realm. I mean, yes, it's been a blessing. Don't get me wrong. With the whole pandemic and everything, that's been kind of the only way to really talk to people is through the computer. Mm-hmm. But we really need to get out and meet each other and get to know your neighbor. I mean, I told you before we got started, I met a gentleman who lives 10, 15 minutes away from me. In his 80s, the guy was on Broadway. He knows Buster Keaton. He's, all these things. Just imagine your neighbor, maybe you've never met before, comes up and you have a great story to tell. You may inspire that person to do more in life. And I think that is important for us to get to know each other, and quit. It seems like everybody gets offended by everything nowadays. We need to put all that stuff aside. That's ridiculousness. We need to focus on each other again, and it's just give people a chance. You know what I mean?
I 100% agree with you. It's the connections between, we're, several hundreds of miles apart, and yet we're eyeball to eyeball and able to talk. And I'd never met you before today, and nor you me. But these connections are really important because
yes, they are.
It's beyond the subject that you start talking about. You find you have other things in common, and it's just you need to establish those relationships and connections, and don't even think of it as a business connection. It's a personal connection with everybody.
Well, I don't know. It seems that when you get to know people, you expand your own life. I take a little bit from everybody that I meet on here, and the computer and all that's a great tool, but there's nothing like human interaction, and we need more of that. We're geared for that. That's what our brains are for, is to mix and mingle, not to be alone. But unfortunately, the way events have been over the last few years, it's like the world's trying to separate us, and we need to get back together again. um Another thing before I move on to your photography, I'm sure you've hit some bumps in the road, and there's a lot of folks out there that they hit hard times, or things happen. I mean, life is going to happen to you. You can't hold that back. Do you have advice for folks that may be going through these struggles?
Well, you are going to have cases. If you're an entrepreneur, you are guaranteed to have some fits and starts. You're going to try something and it absolutely falls on its face, but you don't stay down. You get back up and you say, well, that didn't work, and now I know one more thing that I don't want to do. So you keep going and keep trying. And I tried, for example, putting my music on a TV ad with HGTV. It's a funny story. I had naively thought that if my music was scrolling down the screen like these Time Life videos, or when they're selling all this pretty music, and I love that music, I thought, well, what if I had, Rachel's song and my Beautiful Thoughts album, all my songs scrolling down the screen, playing my pretty music, and oh boy, the sales would just go boom, boom, boom. It would just be amazing. Well, again, I had no idea what I was getting into, but I went to HGTV in Knoxville, Tennessee. That's their headquarters when they first started. And I told them what I wanted. They'd never done that before on their network. But they said, sounds like a good idea, Dave. We'll produce it for you. And for $13,000, we'll run, I think it was 30 of these ads. They're like a 60-second ad with my music. And it was a beautiful ad. It was fantastic. And I said, well, that's a lot of money. But and he says, okay, well, I tell you what, we'll make this deal with you. Because I said, I have no idea whether I'll even break even on this or not. How am I going to know if I'm going to even make $13,000? He says, well, I tell you what I'll do. And this wouldn't happen today, but back then it was on a handshake. He said, Dave, here's what I'll do. I will run your ad on HGTV until you are whole. I said, well, what can I say? But that's a deal I can't turn down. So we did it. And this was, we started running the ads, and I had been so excited. I had hired a call center to answer the phones. And I had printed up thousands of order forms, and I had done all kinds of prep. I had ordered 5,000 CDs of 3 different titles, and man, I was ready. Well, come time for the ads to start rolling, I called the call center. How's it going over there? Well, it's pretty quiet. I think we had 5 calls on it last time. And so it kept on. And I told the guy, I said, I will provide you all the detailed data, who called, when they called, what they ordered, where they're from, everything. So you'll have some good data from your ads that ran on your TV. And he said, okay. So this ran, the ads kept running and running, and they'd get 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 orders every time it ran. And I thought, man, this just is not working. So I realized there's a difference in advertising lingo, between reach, which means the potential audience, how many cables are plugged in that could watch the show, versus how many actually do watch the show and take some action. So I learned a serious lesson of the difference between publicity and advertising. Advertising is a reach kind of thing, and I guess it's a numbers game. I guess they say if you throw it out there enough, often enough and broadly enough, somebody will respond. But I was so naive. They ran my ad in the late night hours. Anytime they had what they call an unsold ad slot on TV, they would slip my ad in there. I was the king of late night TV. They ran my ad for 4 years. 4 years.
Wow.
But I finally got my $13,000, and that was a big lesson for me. I think a big lesson for the HGTV folks as well. But that was one of my things that didn't work.
Hey, you keep trying. That's all I can say. You keep trying. Something's bound to work, and if it doesn't, at least you can say you put forth your effort. Some people won't even get off the couch long enough to say they tried.
Yeah. Or like, for example, in the late 90s, you may remember when Napster came along.
Mm-hmm.
And the big controversy over Napster, because suddenly my digital music that people were paying $15, $14 for a CD and $10 for a tape, Napster was giving it away for free. They were basically stealing my music and everybody else's and letting people download it for free. Well, thank goodness Apple came along with iTunes and sort of changed that business model, thank goodness. And so I had to adapt to that. Our music sales in the 90s, whenever we got into the Napster part, it just took a nosedive.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and so I was worried about, I had one full-time employee, and I was worried about keeping her on, and it was tough. But we weathered that storm, and now we're into the downloading and streaming world. And thank goodness I'm all in all those places, so that's good.
Well, it has made it a lot more beneficial to people that are trying to break into the music business as well. Because I've met some people that, they're not famous, but they've got some great music, and they're able to get on something like Spotify, and they're able to generate at least something from that. And there's some talented people out there. You just don't know what's going to click. I've met some people that we're going to talk about your photography. I've got a friend of mine who's in Australia, takes some of the most beautiful photographs I've ever seen in my life. I don't know how this guy is not working for National Geographic or something, because the guys, you just have to see it. I'll tell you which Instagram to go look at when we get done, but it's not so much about the talent, is sometimes it's the marketing. You just happen to be in the right place at the right time. Because let's face it, even in music, I hear some stuff. It's like, how in the world did that get on the radio? But then I hear somebody else who doesn't get any airtime at all and has stuff that blows me away. So you just you never know. Sometimes it's just luck. Sometimes it is talent. You have to try. At least please try, everybody. Okay, now one of my favorite subjects, because I've met a lot of photographers and I've seen some really beautiful shots. When did you get into photography, and tell me what you enjoy most about it?
Well, I think, again, it was one of those things where my father also liked photography. I still remember it was a Bellows camera that it was folded up. It was a Kodak, I think, and you basically clicked it and it folded down. It had a nice Bellows front to it, and it took a large format negative. And it took some great pictures. And then as soon as Polaroid came around, I remember when that happened, you didn't have to send your film off to the we didn't even have 1 hour photo back. You mailed it in and waited a week or two before you got your pictures back. Well, Polaroid came along and instantly you could see your pictures. Well, my family, my cousins, all my relatives love taking family photos and stuff. So I guess I was around a camera most of my life. Lots of I have boxes full of black and white pictures from my mom. But as soon as, I learned about stereo photography, it's kind of a crazy, off in one of the fringes of photography, but I loved 3D photography, stereo photography. I learned about that in college. I took a aerial photography interpretation course, which was all about looking through these lenses down at stereo photographs. And it was in the World War II, it was a big deal because you could, in a stereo photograph, they would fly over the enemy positions and take these series of photographs. And when you looked at them in a stereo, when they had a tank camouflaged where the naked eye it just looked like forest land. But in a stereo look of it, there's the shape of a tank. So it was a wartime thing in the 1940s to take stereo photography. Well, I liked that as a hobby, so I started taking my own stereo pairs of photographs of basically landscape, pretty pictures. A dogwood tree in bloom. I would take one picture and then take another picture. They call it, you'll like this. They call it the astronaut shuffle.
Astronaut shuffle.
The astronaut shuffle in stereo photography, because you put your weight on your right foot, take a picture, put your weight on your left foot and take a picture. And that's the way they took stereo photographs on the moon.
Oh, wow. Did not know that.
Yeah. So they call it the astronaut shuffle when you're taking stereo pairs of photographs. And when you look at those two pictures through a viewer, it's in 3D. It's like you could reach out and touch it.
Wow.
So that kind of got me hooked. And here I am, bunches of years later. I still love 3D photography, but I love color photography. And when digital photography came along, wow, it just kicked me in high gear, because, man, I had to have me a good quality camera where I could go out and take great I love landscape photography. Being in North Carolina, Tennessee, the mountains in the fall foliage, and at the ocean, go down to the beach and take all those beautiful sunrise and sunsets at the beach photographs. I just have enjoyed that to no end. So I still, and today everybody has a camera in their pocket, right? Yep. And so this camera is phenomenal on my iPhone. It's just takes as good a picture as I just about take with a 35 millimeter camera. So.
Yeah. Oh, heck, you got a recording studio and a movie studio, everything right here in the palm of your hand.
You got that right. If you go to my YouTube channel, Combs Music, you'll find I've got a lot of videos that I've taken with my phone. For example, there's a place around here where I ride on the Greenway. There's some flowers, and just do a search on millions of flowers, and you'll see a field full of tick seed weed. These are bright yellow flowers that in early September bloom by the millions. And so I rode my bicycle around, put my camera up on my helmet, and rode my bicycle around this wonderful field, and I made a video and put my music behind it. So you can listen to my music and watch the video of this beautiful scenery at the same time. So a lot of my photography is on my YouTube channel.
Wow. I'm looking forward to more of, because I have been on your YouTube. I subscribed to it and I checked it out. I'm like, wow, this is gorgeous. So I'm looking forward to what new stuff you can put on there.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we're getting close to the end. And so is there some maybe social media or something that people can go to follow you?
Well, I do. I'm not terribly active on any. I do on Facebook. I post occasionally on Facebook, and you'll find links to all my social media on my website. But and on YouTube, I'll put YouTube videos up there occasionally. But the main place to find me is to start at combsmusic.com, and that will be my homepage, and you can see an interview that Jack Canfield did of me, for example, on my media page, and then all these podcasts I've been appearing on lately, and then there's stories about an article that I wrote in Guidepost magazine. Some of your listeners,
those.
Yeah, this little magazine only goes out to about 3 million people, and I wrote an article in 1994 that appeared in this magazine. And that little article generated over 10,000 immediate responses from the readers. And my mail came in a canvas bag that the mailman couldn't even pick up.
He was cussing you, huh?
Well, he did ask me. He says, "Dave, what in the world have you done?" So, well, I just wrote a little article, and so I heard from over 10,000 people. My phone rang continuously, and my mail bag was full, and so publicity through a magazine is priceless.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for spending some time with me and our listeners. And I'd love to have you back on in the future, especially if you have any new projects come out. I'd love to help promote it. And Once again, we have was it combmusic.com?
Combsmusic.com.
Okay.
Yep.
I will put the links up in the description. And so you can just click on it and go to it. And I want to thank everyone that has joined us. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. If you're a regular, thank you for your support. I really appreciate it. And so until the next one, everyone, please take care, be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network